On our morning show, we're talking about the Richland Concert Association, and it's been a great season for them, but it's not over yet. A couple of big deal wins coming up here in the next couple of months as well. Joining us is Dale Sinnett, who's the president of the Concert Association, and Logan Willis, who will be a featured performer here in the upcoming series. Good morning, Logan. Good to have you in here to the studio with us.
Yeah, it's good to be back, Phil.
You were here a year ago, I believe it was.
Not even a year ago. I think it was, what was it, early August when we were talking about the 60th anniversary of the RCA, that local feature concert.
And that one went pretty well for you?
Yes, it did. It did. My wife Shay and I ended up performing one of my pieces on that concert, giving it that premiere, and that went very, very well.
Well, you'll be performing The Soul Entertainer coming up on March 15th.
Well, not actually performing in this case.
Okay.
In this case, I am going to be taking a backseat to the actual performers of that concert, and instead of participating as a featured performer, I would be participating as a featured composer. So I ended up working with these two musicians who are coming on March 15th. Their names Matthew Coley and Jennifer Ruggieri. They ended up agreeing to work with me on a new piece for their instruments, which are harp and cymbalom. So they are going to be performing, giving the premiere of that work coming up March 15th.
I'm amazed. You have to write it specifically for those instruments then? How does that work?
Well, in this case, I was initially thinking that that Matthew was going to be involved as a marimba player. So when I initially talked with the RCA board about a potential commission project for their 60th anniversary, I ended up reaching out to Jennifer, whose contact information Elaine Stafford ended up having as a member of the board. I ended up reaching out to her, asking if she would be willing to work on a piece for harp and marimba. In the response that I ended up getting, she said that they might not actually be bringing marimba. Instead, they will be bringing cymbalom. So that was the reason why I ended up pivoting to that set of instruments, just based on what the performers were actually going to be bringing that day.
Tell us what they'll be performing that day. What's its title?
The title of the piece is Nachtslied, German for night song.
And where did you come up with the inspiration?
There's a lot of separate inspirations that go into it. The first is just my general fascination with the concept of sleep and dreams. Throughout my life, I have had a long history of having very strange and very powerful dreams whenever I sleep. Sometimes they're about like my common fears, like inexplicably volcanoes, and other times they're just about things that I happen to think about in the moment. So sometimes I'll actually even hear like things in my dreams that I have not heard before. So I'll actually be kind of lucid composing in that process.
That's interesting. Do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and say, I've got to write this down?
Occasionally, I get that kind of inclination, but I've never really ended up doing that myself. I mean, by the time I wake up, a lot of it is already gone. Sometimes it's just that I immediately recognize what that material is, so it's like, nah, I don't really want to copy another composer's work today. And I mean, oftentimes it's just because that I don't have a good setup for like how I would want to transcribe all of that. I don't sleep with a recorder next to me, as an example, and even if I did, I don't want to be waking up my wife by singing, you know?
But you bring up an interesting point. Do you ever sit there and rack your brain for a day or so saying, was that something that I just thought of, or is that something I've heard?
Occasionally, I do get down that rabbit hole of, is this mine or is this something that somebody else has already written and that I'm just hearing from something that I no longer remember. Truth be told, I don't necessarily give it that much leeway because I usually trust my own instincts at this point to know how to create something original from all of that input.
How long did it take to compose Nachtslied?
It took about probably 5 to 6 months, which is admittedly quite a bit slower than some of my other pieces. It's just a matter of how I needed to go about the composing process. Because, for one, I had never written before for either harp or for cymbalom, so I needed to be able to learn how to write for those instruments in a way that would make the performers enjoy playing it, and not want to tear their hair out from being given parts that just don't fit their instruments. So a good portion of that 6 months was in just trying to learn the instruments themselves, how they're set up, what they sound best doing, and how I could eventually write to cater to the normal playing style of both of those instruments.
So you had to learn how to play those instruments, then, in other words?
Almost. It is a bit different for composers. The process of learning an instrument is a little bit different than that of a performer. For one, usually composers, especially when we're starting out, don't have the financial stability or the financial requirements to be able to source our own instruments to learn. So, I mean, as much as my family has been supportive financially, I couldn't put it on them to, ship me in a harp and a cymbalom to be able to learn. As much as I would love to have that happen, I couldn't put that on them, especially given that the cymbalom is pretty much exclusively made overseas, so that's already going to be hit by some of the federal tariffs.
Sure. Well, that was my next uneducated question. What is a cymbalom, or what does it look like? How does it play?
So the cymbalom is actually the national instrument of Hungary. It was initially invented, I think, sometime between the 1850s and the 1870s, but it took a lot of its inspiration from a lot of the existing hammered dulcimers and those folk instruments during that time. So the main idea of a cymbalom now is that basically it's this trapezoidal tabletop with all of these strings drawn across the flat soundboard. And there would be a few wooden pieces that would help elevate the strings above that soundboard that also help with tuning that instrument. And so that is the layout of the instrument itself. The performer would then make a sound, typically by using mallets that they call hammers, either that are wrapped with cotton, with leather, with metal, or occasionally just the wooden sticks themselves, and they strike directly on the strings with them.
Very interesting. So when you write, Logan, do you write on piano, or what instrument do you use usually?
Well, in this case, I was trying to avoid the piano. One thing that I have learned from my experience writing other pieces for other ensembles is that if I write while at the piano, I actually start unintentionally pivoting towards almost what sounds better on the piano as I'm approaching the material for each other instrument, which can present a bit of issue, or can present a bit of issue if the instruments are very distinct from one another and don't have similar play styles. So if I was going to be approaching the cymbalom like a piano, I would be writing extraordinarily difficult and also extraordinarily uncomfortable parts for that instrument. So I decided to go and compose pretty much entirely away from a piano.
So what instrument did you use then?
I didn't use any instrument. Just
your head, right there. Wow. Mm-hmm. That's impressive. So you're sitting there with your treble clef, and you're sitting there, you're writing the notes on there. Is that how it goes?
Well, it's there's a lot that goes into it. There is certainly that element of just trying to very precisely imagine not only the sound of the instrument, but also the exact pitch that you want to use in the course of a passage or just at a moment. So a lot of that is just to imagine that moment or that stretch with as much clarity as possible, and then to write it out on a piece of staff paper. You can see all of that on my on the table here. But occasionally there'll be some ideas that I want to use that don't necessarily fall quite in line with what a traditional Western staff notation can easily display. For instance, the piece Nachtlied, along with using a harp and cymbalom, each performer also has identical music boxes that they play at specific times. So each one would have a custom music box that I have made for them and shipped out to them that plays specific material at specific points in the piece. So this would be kind of running on the same principle of that as a player piano, where you'd have a coil of paper that you punch holes in, and each hole that you punch in is what triggers that pitch to play. So in that process, I needed to essentially compose the music boxes first so that I could construct the duo material for harp and cymbalom after that fact. And then there was the issue of how to coordinate the two, since, I mean, if everything had been already written out for the music boxes, it doesn't really make sense to try and write that out again, especially since I was not particularly picky on where in the music box's loop was going to be played at any given point. So I ended up going with some approaches to graphic notation, with simply trying to display only the information that was absolutely necessary for the performers. So I essentially ended up going with displaying where they would need to start cranking the music boxes in order to get them to start playing, as well as generally the speed at which the performers need to crank.
And Dale Sinnett is showing me here the music. So there's a line there for the music box.
Yes, there is. Yeah, and each performer has those lines.
Oh, very, very interesting. You said you were really influenced. You really have studied German composers.
Mm-hmm.
What makes that music unique, and I guess what attracted you to it?
Well, in this case, a lot of the material and a lot of the music that has been written for the cymbalom specifically has generally been in that Central to Eastern European market. So, along with some other composers that I had been listening to at that time, I also ended up really prioritizing the music of Hungarian composers to learn the cymbalom as completely as I can. One composer that proved very useful for me is the Hungarian composer György Kurtag, who incidentally ended up celebrating his 100th birthday just this last week.
Still living?
Mm-hmm. He is still living.
That's impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's still composing, which is even more impressive.
That is very impressive. Dale Sinnett is here, president of the Concert Association. Dale, as you've heard Logan speaking, he just never ceases to amaze me. Does he you?
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've actually told Logan, but when he was in elementary school, I think it was, Mary Beth Behrens was band director at Ithaca. She asked me to accompany him. Oboe, I don't think voice, just oboe. And that was very interesting. And he, as I look back, had some very definite, good musical ideas at that time. And I've accompanied him through high school, I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to me, it's very exciting and very rewarding to see what he's done with this, because he's just continued to develop his own ideas and so forth.
Now, you've accompanied many students over the years, but could you see that he was kind of a prodigy at that time when you were accompanying him then back?
The first time I was there, we were doing this little oboe ditty, and I made some suggestion. He said, no, he says, I want to do it this way.
Uh-huh.
I genuinely have no memory of that.
Probably not. I mean, it was a very small thing, but suddenly it kind of took me back. What grade would you have been in then, Logan? Maybe 6th grade, 5th grade?
I would probably guess 7th grade. I think that was the first time that I ended up doing any solo and ensemble stuff for oboe.
Uh-huh.
So we ended up talking about that, and I kind of explored what he wanted to do it and why, and it was good ideas. So I have no problems with that. And so that was quite exciting. So you could see even at that time that he had an aptitude for what kind of sounds he wanted to make and how he was going to go about doing it.
Playing the oboe itself is impressive. That's not an easy
Yes, it
instrument
is.
to play, right? Oh my goodness! So has it been a good season with the Concert Association, Dale?
Oh, we've always have good seasons. Absolutely, it's just been exciting. You know, we've been in business for 60 years, thanks to all of those who went before us, and we did that program last summer, I guess. And we can't thank our viewers and the previous board members enough for what they've done to keep this thing going for this long. As far as we know, there's not another classical music program in small communities in the state. So there used to be quite a few when we started, but now it's very hard to do that, and sometimes it can be a struggle for us to keep going because there's not a huge audience that wants to go and listen to classical music, especially in a small community. But we have wonderful attendees. They're very supportive and very regular at attending, and new ones are coming and young ones. So it's just very exciting to be able to bring good quality music to the community.
You have 2 shows left, but highlights of the season so far, Dale. Has there been a favorite for you?
Well, probably each one's a favorite. The first one, the Alloy Horn Quartet.
Oh, yeah.
They come from the Chicago area, and they were French horns, and they just did amazing things, and they communicate well with the audience, and we like that, and people like that as well. So, and that was all females as well. So they were really quite extraordinary. Actually, we only have extraordinary performers come. We are so fortunate that the performers that come could and do get paid far more than they do when they come to Richland Center. So part of it is the gift that we get from the attendees, our concert goers, but the performers also give us a great gift in that they come for much less than they can get elsewhere.
I was going to say, are they on a circuit then? Are they playing somewhere else the night before, or how do you get them?
Well, they like to get that, but not I don't see that happening too much.
Okay.
We have repeat people coming back because they say, we like it here. Can we come back? Part of that is the Elaine makes desserts and food for them so that they can snack before, during, and after the program. So, and then we get to have the leftovers. So yeah, we are very fortunate with not only those who come to the concerts and purchase tickets, which is a very small part of what it costs to run a program, but we have members that are wonderful contributors, from writing checks to giving the required minimum distribution from their IRAs or retirement accounts. Lots of ways they can support it, and they do. And so we've been able to continue on without reducing quality, without reducing the number of concerts that we do. It's still six a year. And so it's just amazing, and that's because of the support we have from community.
You have 2 more left. We jump ahead over Logan's on the 15th. What do you have coming up in April, Dale?
April 12th, we have the Ridgetones from Viroqua. We just they've been around for a long time apparently, but Elaine and I just learned about it last Christmas. We went up and heard their program. Amazing talent that they have up there. So we reached out to them to see if they would come and participate in our program, and they graciously have accepted to do so. It's local. How would I say this? I might be speaking more than I know, but it seems that most of them are local people, not professional musicians per se, but they practice regularly and produce high quality music that's very entertaining and just totally enjoyable. So if you want to hear good singing, be sure to come April 12th.
April 12th.
Yes.
And people can get tickets right at the door.
Absolutely.
And,
absolutely. And all students through high school are free.
Okay. Now, starting the next year, you can buy the season ticket, right?
You can.
You can do that, too.
We haven't raised the season tickets or the individual tickets for years and years and years. Because, as I said, they provide some income and give a sense of some ownership. But all of those ticket sales together would not even pay for one concert.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and that's true for large symphonies and so on and so forth. So it's always very dependent upon people having a great interest in music and willing to support it, not only with their attendance but with their dollars.
Where are your shows held at, Dale?
Well, when Greg Zellick comes from Madison, we use the pipe organ. We use the what used to be called the Trinity Methodist Church. Now it's the Richland Center Methodist Church. And they provide the pipe organ and tune it for us. And Greg comes and, matter of fact, he'll be here next year as well again. So people love him, and that's great. Otherwise, most of them are held at the Seventh-day Adventist Church out on Highway 80 South. Nice platform, got a good piano there, and it's just a comfy place.
Yeah, no doubt about it. You know, it's unique. You mentioned the Concert Association for a community this size especially, but it's got to be unique to have one of your own composing something and playing. That's got to be a rarity, isn't it?
Well, it is. It was wonderful. We were looking for some younger members on our board. So we made an announcement that we would like some, and if anyone is interested, Logan and Shay came to me.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think it was at that Greg Zellick concert.
I think it was too, yes. And so he's been on it ever since. And so I followed him along, watched some of his concerts at Lawrence, and you completed your master's in composition at where?
At the University of Maryland.
University of Maryland. And so when he joined the board, I started thinking, wouldn't it be nice if he would compose something for this or use something that he'd already composed? We had two board members that said that they would pay him a commission to compose something for the Concert Association. And so that's how it came about. And so he was challenged, he accepted, and we have the product before us, and I think he's been paid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
So my question is, you always have the next one in mind? Are you composing something now for the future, Logan?
Yeah, I always have ideas in mind. Sometimes there are ideas that I've had like in the process of writing the previous piece, and sometimes they're just trying to fill in these extra ideas for a piece that I've had in mind for several years at this point. It's just a matter of trying to manage that time and is really just the time management portion that I really need to practice the most, because some of these works can take a lot longer than I usually anticipate, and given that I'm also recently married, ended up moving into a house rather recently, there's a lot of things that can get in the way of composing unless I leave very specifically and very guarded time for it. So,
and Shay lets you do that?
Yes, she does.
She does. Yes, and I am very grateful that she does let me do that.
That's interesting. So
the cat's not so much.
So is it late at night, Logan, or is it during the day?
Typically, most of my better work or most of my more efficient work happens in the evenings and at night. Usually, that's just because I've had most of the day to do all the rest of the things that I need to do, whether that's my actual work that I use to make my living. Or it's just because I spend enough time during the day thinking of maybe this idea, and I can refine it over the course of a morning and afternoon to finally think, okay, this is the idea that I want to at least further consider. Let's write it down.
Okay. Wow. How long will it take to perform this?
This piece is about 8.5 minutes long.
Okay.
So it's not particularly that long, especially in the context of a lot of classical works that can go absurdly long. But it is a fairly sizable piece.
Will there be some other music produced that day or presented that day?
There will be, yes. Unfortunately, I've not heard from the performers yet as to what the full of their program is going to be, and I don't really expect to hear from them until probably a week or two before the concert. So we should be hearing from them fairly soon as to what their ending program is going to be. But I do know that this piece is going to be on it, and I have full faith in their artistic capacities that all the rest of the pieces they have on that program will also be fantastic.
Are you nervous about it?
There's always a part of me that is nervous about it because there is the element of control. You see, when I am composing, I have essentially the first and final say over what ends up making it on the page, whether it's specific directions for for where performers need to enter and exit, or if it's the manner of how they enter, i.e., the intensity of their onset, their articulation. But once all of that composing process is done and the score is sent off to the performers, you essentially have to relinquish control because you have to trust their musical intuition to interpret what you have left them and make something extraordinarily musical out of it. So there is always that fear on my end that maybe there's something that wouldn't translate quite so well either to their instruments or to their own experience. It's because I mean, these performers are from other areas of the country. The harpist is situated in Chicago most of the time, and the cymbalomist, I believe, is in Iowa. So even though there are some general regional things that might be interpretable between all three of us, there is still the element of potentially miscommunicating based on what I think a definition of a word might be and what they expect that word to mean.
Ah, interesting. So will you be, you won't hear it in advance then? The first time you hear it will be that day in person?
Thankfully, no.
Okay.
I will be hearing the work at some point before that concert.
Okay.
I still have to work with the musicians yet to work out when I'm going to be able to video call in and hear the work before then. But I am at least going to hear it once before, just to make sure that it's going to be up to quality, as well as to make sure that the work is not making any significant deviations from what I anticipated it being. But then the other part of it is that it's me acting as an external pair of ears, in wherein I can help however I can with trying to make their vision of my music as musical as possible.
Interesting. Going to be a fun one coming up on March 15th for the Richland Concert Association. Dale Sinnett, anything else that you wanted to add today?
Yeah, a couple of things. So what you just said is that it's more of a collaboration between you and the performers. Mm-hmm. They might have some suggestions they would like you to consider.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I'll give an example of that. So when I was working on producing the piece, and I was working with the cymbalomist Matthew Coley on some of the ideas. One thing that he had mentioned was, in my score, I was asking for a lot of what are called dead stops. So in percussion language, that is when you take the mallet and at the same time that you are hitting the membrane or the like marimba or xylophone head that produces the sound, the mallet essentially also mutes the instrument at the same time it articulates. So it's giving a lot of intense sound at the beginning, as well as no sustaining sound after. Because I knew that the performer was a percussionist, I knew that he would be familiar with that language, but what I was not familiar with was just how fragile the cymbalome hammers can be. He mentioned that he had ended up breaking more than one hammer trying to do that exact technique. So, I mean, especially given the fact that a lot of the materials for cymbalomes are still sourced from overseas, it would be a fairly expensive thing to try and replace, were I to be the reason for another one breaking. So what I ended up doing was drastically cutting back the number of that technique, and looking to other ideas for how to get that kind of sharp articulation with little sustaining.
Okay. Interesting. Do you listen to any other kind of music? Do you listen to Metallica or anything like that in your spare time?
I actually had been listening for a good portion of that composing process. I had been listening to Charlie XCX and that her recent album Brat, actually. Not that I necessarily think that any of that ended up making it into my music. Although who knows? Someone might say, "Oh, this connects there." But yeah, I do generally try and have a fairly wide diet for my music listening, whether that be for my own personal enjoyment or my own personal study, or trying specifically to look for techniques that other composers have used that I am hoping to either emulate or learn from.
Sure, absolutely. Dale, anything else you wanted to add today?
Yeah, a little bit about the character of the music so that people have an idea what they might hear when they come.
Yep.
because it's night music, and you mentioned about the dreaming. So you didn't mention that I'm going to walk out of there humming a pretty little ditty. And I've looked at the score, and I've played most of it on the piano, which is a very challenging event, but it's also auditorially a bit challenging as well. How would you characterize the sound that we will hear?
How I would characterize the sound is the way that I usually try and conceive of my music is by some sort of process or by some sort of change over time. So one of the composers that I specifically ended up looking not only for some guidance on the use of the instruments, but also for guidance on how to physically structure the music so that I'm, spending enough time in certain sections and not overspending my time in any other ideas, is the French composer Gérard Griset. He's been a personal favorite of mine. He had written this 1995 work for 2 bass drums, if you can imagine that.
Wow.
They're meant to be on opposite ends of the stage, so they're meant to be nearly at the edge of being able to communicate with one another, especially considering the amount of distance that the performers would have to be from each other and the auditory delay from that. But in that process, I ended up looking at the score and ended up just measuring out how long each of the other sections that he's written ended up taking. So there was an introductory essentially an introductory static sound that comes in for something like 27 seconds. It's just a brush being repeatedly rubbed on the surface of the bass drum membrane. He then moves into the first section, back into the static section, then his second section of the ensemble, back to it, and then back and forth once more. So overall, it's a 7-part piece. And one thing that I noticed about that was how the duration of each section ended up comparing to the next. So that first static section was the longest. The next one was, I think, something between 3/4 and 4/5 of that duration. Then kind of similarly again with the third of those static sections. And it gave me kind of an impression of a slow compression that goes on over the course of that piece. So I ended up taking some of those lessons to try and structure my piece in that also ended up being in 7 parts. So the first general section is meant to be evoking a state of hypersensory, with being perhaps too awake or maybe even too over-caffeinated, being just almost overwhelmingly aware of all of the components that we are hearing. So that section has a lot of very harsh articulation noise, which also includes a number of effects like the cymbalomist repeatedly striking the string so that a lot of the sound that we are hearing isn't the sustaining, but is the re-attack of each note. The middle section is what I describe as homeostasis, kind of a balance between the ability to hear and the comprehensibility of it. And then the third section is what I'm describing as somnolence. So basically at that point where you're still at least somewhat aware, but very much drifting off into a state of sleep. It's the last moment where things make at least some amount of sense.
Huh. Any music to go along with volcanoes then, too?
So far, no. I have thought about it, but I don't necessarily know if I could sleep during that process.
Oh, man, it's going to be great. Knocklead put on by harp, cymbalom, and 2 identical music boxes composed by Logan Willis. Logan, always good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you, too.
Thanks for coming in. And Dale, good luck with the rest of the season here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all you do for the Concert Association.
It's a pleasure. Logan Willis's production, Knocklead, coming up as part of the show on March 15th. And again, the choral group coming up on April 12th, rounding out this season of the Richland Concert Association.